Welcome to Construction Genius. My guest today is Ryce Elliott, and Ryce is the president of Benning Construction from Atlanta, Georgia. And he was born into a non-construction family, a U.S. Army veteran, and he journeyed into the industry from Purdue University when he transitioned from pursuing civil engineering to discovering a passion for building in the construction management program. Now, he started at Benning as a laborer. And we go through his career journey because, again, it's very instructive to take these career journeys with construction pros who've been in the business for a long time, because it'll give you insights not only into how to develop your own career, but if you're the president of an organization, how to spot talent and develop that talent through your organization. We also talk about the ups and downs of his career, some of the failures that he had in certain positions, how he became the president of Benning Construction, and how he's now focused on bringing more people into the construction industry. You'll enjoy this conversation with Ryce, and let's dive right in. This is Eric Anderton, and you're listening to Construction Genius, a leadership masterclass. Thomas Edison said that genius is 1% inspiration and 99% perspiration. If you're a construction leader, you know all about the perspiration, and this show is all about the 1% inspiration that you can add to your hard work to help you to improve your leadership. Ryce, welcome to Construction Genius.
Thanks for having me. Happy to be here.
That's awesome. I want to get into the Wayback Machine right now. As we're recording this in late April, I want to go back 30 years to June 20th, 1994, and your first day working for Benning Construction Company. Tell us about that first day.
First day, June 20th, 1994, been graduated from Purdue University for a couple of weeks. Had moved from Indiana down here to Atlanta. Walk in the front door, went to the receptionist and introduced myself, and I said I was here to see Mr. Benning. And she said, "Which one?" And she goes, "There's an older Mr. Benning and a younger Mr. Benning." "Well, I think it's a younger Mr. Benning." She goes, "Oh, okay." So she calls his office and sends me back, and I walk in, and he looks up and he goes, "Who are you?" "My name's Ryce Elliott. Why are you here? You hired me a couple of months ago, and it's be my first day." He's like, "Oh, okay." So I filled out some paperwork, and I said, I got back to him. I said, "Well, what would you like me to do?" He's like, "Well, here, come here." So he takes me downstairs to this room. It's full of dusty plans and binders and everything else. And he goes, "All right, I need you to organize this room. Organize it, clean it up." And will do. Took me 3 days. And it was full. It was dusty. It was dirty. So I got done, and I went back up to see him. And he looks up and he goes, "You're still here?" I said, "Yes, sir, I am. And what do you want me to do now?" "Well, I guess if you stayed through all that, you're going to be a keeper. Let me go ahead and introduce you to Dave Knight, who was an executive that put me to work with him." So I was worked with Dave for about a month or two, and I started getting to know everybody a bit. Dave goes, "Ryce, it's time for you to go to the field." I said, "Okay, what do you want me to do?" He goes, "You'll do whatever the superintendent tells you to do." Like, all right, that works. So sent out to a job site with a superintendent who at that point had been with the company for about a decade or so, Mike Wharton, great guy. He went ahead and put me to work. He said, "All right, well, since I don't know what you can do, I'm going to have you picking up trash." "No problem. Whatever you want, boss." So went through and started picking up trash. We're working on a 65,000 square foot grocery store. So picked up trash, and for about half a day, came back, said, "All right, all done." He goes, "Did you get everything?" I said, "Yeah." We went back out and looked around. He goes, "Well, I guess you did. So I guess you're worth something. Let me see if, let me see what else you can do." So
let me just interrupt you there. I think it's really interesting. I know your background as you're coming out of college, you have a background not only in college, but you were also in the military. Is that right?
correct.
What impact do you think that military background had in terms of how you handled those initial sort of tasks or initial opportunities that you had, those tests, so to speak?
Well, here's the thing. I took to the military very, very well. My parents great, good, solid Midwesterners. And I'm not going to say strict, but it was, everything was yes, sir, no, sir, yes, ma'am, no, ma'am. It was, you're given a job, you do that job and you do it to the best of your ability.
Mhm.
And so that was great going into the Army because that's all they ask you to do. You
Right.
the job, you do it right. And so really, if even without that background, the military or the Army is a great prep for construction because construction, believe it or not, is very ordered, it's very structured. You have to work with diverse groups. You have to have a team that pull together in order to be able to achieve an objective, which really is what you do most of the time in the military.
Yeah. That's interesting. Interesting. So that sort of that can-do attitude, that willingness to do the, so to speak, the dirty work. Because, you're coming in with a degree from Purdue, right? So you're like, hey, what are you doing, man? I got the degree. Give me something degree-like to do. Don't give me the dirty office to clean up and the trash to pick up, right?
I will say that goes back to my parents. My parents,
Okay.
my brothers and I, it was that every person is deserving of respect, no matter who they are, no matter what they are, no matter what they do, and every job that they do. So if there's somebody out there working, you're not better than they are.
Yeah.
If they need help or you're asked to help them, hey, you do it. And that's just the end of it.
Let me ask you a question, as because you've been obviously around for a number of years here, and people often like to compare generations, and particularly when it comes to the sort of the attitude of the generations. Now, I mean, you and I are of the same generation, so I can tell you from my background, I wasn't a very respectful person coming up. And so a lot of people, they'll look at new generations now and say, these kids, they don't have any respect or anything like that. What's your view on the differences in generations, if any, or and are you able to find people like yourself who had that kind of can-do, respectful attitude, willing to work hard even at a job that isn't that flashy?
Yes, I can say an unequivocal yes. And the reason on that is it's not so much a generational thing. It's understanding how the biggest thing I've seen with generations is how they process information differently.
Yes.
That is a huge item because for us, well, at least for we're Gen X, at least with me,
Yep.
everything is very black and white. It's like, okay, yeah, it is or it isn't. Let's just do it and we go. But when you start talking to the Gen Zs and the millennials, a lot of them don't like that very upfront, in your face type of, that's what it is. Let's do it. Just accept it and move on. They want to go ahead and work through the information a little bit better. They want to know the why. They want to know how this impacts others, so on and so forth, where, we're just more of a, all right, let's get the job done and go. So, for example, 2 years ago, we were doing a office upfit for a large national client over here in Atlanta. It was floors 4, 5, and 6 in an office building. And, didn't have a large freight elevator. It was an occupied office building. We were getting down to the home stretch. The millwork contractor was bringing in all the millwork. We had to schedule out a certain time in the loading dock for the building to get that millwork truck in there and get things offloaded. Millwork contractor gets there, and his crew he had driving down from North Georgia, the truck broke down. Well, we only got this loading dock space for a couple of hours. Well, our office is only 10 minutes from the job, 10, 15 minutes from the job. The superintendent calls the project manager and says, we got a problem. All this millwork is here. It's got to get offloaded today. We don't get another slot for another week. What do I do? So we went ahead and, started calling around, and that project manager went ahead and raised his hand to his executive in charge and said, what do we do? Well, the executive goes around to the entire office and says, okay, we got a problem. This is what we got. Who's going to get in the car with me to go over and offload the millwork? So we had 6 or 8 project managers over there. We got a couple of laborers from another job site, and everybody went over there. And keep in mind, the elevator wasn't large. A lot of this had to be hand carried up 4 flights of stairs, get it to where it could be staged. So, that can-do attitude, it's there. It's just knowing how to communicate with these folks in such a way that they get it and they understand the urgency and what the requirement.
Yeah, that's excellent. I think you nailed it right there when you said it was about the communication of information, because, and that's the thing is oftentimes those generational differences are actually pretty superficial
Mhm.
as long as you understand that communication piece.
Yep.
So let me just go back into your career then. So, you had those two, you were picking up trash, you were cleaning up dusty plan rooms. Where did your career go from there? How did you begin to progress through the company? And was that an intentional progression that the company laid out for you as a possibility, or was it just something that happened as you went through the process?
I don't think there was an intentional progression because when I entered the company, it was still a family-owned company. We're employee-owned now.
Yep.
And at that time, the current member of the family running the company had, kids that were in their teens, and he thought they were going to take over the company. Well, so we weren't grooming anybody to move up into that executive level because it was, well, my kids are going to do that. That's what Ted the Third thought. And so
Yep.
when I was there, I just went ahead and took on any job that they gave me. It
Okay.
was, okay, well, you're going to do this for a bit. Great. So do that. And then get done and say, all right, what's next? What's more? I want to learn how to do this. I want to do that. Then just kept taking on each challenge as it came up and kept asking for more.
What was motivating you in that?
Now, you're going to think this sounds hokey, but I have a very, very firm belief that with a schedule, a plan, and discipline, you can accomplish anything.
Yep.
I am still working to prove this to myself. I run marathons, ultra marathons, adventure races, 24-hour relays, and I'm in my 50s, but it's one of those things where, all right, I got a training schedule. I can do this. I can make it happen. And so I apply the same thing in my professional life of, okay, I'm a project manager. Great. Well, how can I go ahead and can I do my work, and can I go ahead and run a couple of folks as well? Okay, well, yeah, how do I do that? Well, I need to learn how to do this. I need to read this, I need to organize that. And so I like a challenge. I like seeing how far I can push myself and see how I can improve myself and how I can help others improve what they are doing. Because if they're doing things better, that makes it better for me. It makes it better for everybody. And so always working to improve and always working to help.
Let me ask you this about, you mentioned marathons, ultra marathons. One of the challenges that executives have because of the load of work that they have is prioritizing their health and fitness. Is that something you've always had, or was there a particular point in time where you decided to make that an emphasis? How did that develop?
When I was younger, for the longest time, my wife and I did nothing but mountain bike, and we did races and everything else, and it was great. Of course, then you have kids. That tends to take a lot of time away. Did Ironman, and for the longest time, it was just doing things to do them,
Right.
just for the challenge. But about 6, 8, 10 years ago, I really started noticing I was putting on a few pounds. I was, I was not a happy person, and I'm like, you know what? I need to change something, and I need to find some way for this outlet of stress and to get some mental clarity. And so at that point, I'm like, okay, well, let's go ahead and start doing races again, but let's be very structured in how we're doing this. So I make it a point where, I'm running 3 times a week, and I'm normally in the gym doing, just light exercise to the shoulders and so forth, probably 2 days. We have actually installed a gym here at the office for the employees to use.
What advice would you give to someone in your shoes? So, because people who are presidents of companies, they're listening to this podcast right now. What advice do you give to them in terms of them being able to manage their time in such a way that they carve out the time necessary for the kind of fitness regime or fitness habit that, again, they may not be running Ironmans or marathons, but they're keeping themselves tuned in so that they're able to give their best effort as they're working in the office?
Only advice I can give is exactly what you stated. Make the time. Some people are morning people. Some people are evening people. I'm a morning person. I get up at 4 a.m. every morning, and I'm either running or in the gym, and I go from there and I come to the office. But I have found when I get really busy, I'm like, well, I'll skip this run or I'll skip doing this. If that goes for about 4 days or so, and I start noticing a huge difference in myself and my attitude, and also in my mental clarity.
Yes.
So it's incredibly important. You've got to make time for it.
So how can someone avoid, sort of the New Year's resolution stuff where, maybe they'll listen to this podcast and they'll think, man, I'm going to do it. Right. And then, they do it for a week and then they just completely drop off. What advice would you have for people in your experience, particularly as, if you're running ultra marathons or adventure races, you're not just going to roll out of bed and run an ultra marathon. You've got to build to that over time. Do you have some advice for people as far as that's concerned?
I do. And actually, for the third year in a row, I've signed up for the Dopey Challenge.
Nice.
Down at Disney. Over the course of four days, you run a 5K, a 10K, a half marathon, then a marathon.
Oh, wow.
And so what I find keeps me on track is signing up for those events.
Oh.
If I always have a race, Sunday I'm doing a half marathon.
Right.
I always have an event a couple of weeks in the future. So it's like, all right, well, I've signed up for this event, I've got my training schedule, I got to stick to it in order to be able to hit that event. And so to me, that's what helps maintain accountability. If you're just, I'll admit it, if I'm just like, I'm going to run to stay in shape, I would probably peter out after a couple of weeks. But if you got an event out there, especially a longer distance one, where if you don't train, it's going to be a bad day, that's what keeps me honest.
That's really great. That's a great piece of advice, particularly for people. I know folks who run their own companies, they're competitive driven people. And so to have that goal in front of them, that can be super helpful. Let's pivot back to your career now. So you went through a variety of different jobs in the company. What was the one job in the company that you weren't really good at that over time you were able to master?
Oh, I hate to say it. When I got to lead my first team of project managers, I was bad at it. I was really bad because I had the mistaken impression that so many people do. Well, they can't do it as well as I can, so they need to do it my way. And well, you're not doing that right. Well, I'll do that for you, and then I know it's done right. And it took me, a solid year, if not a little more, to get it to where I could get the system in where it was, you're doing this, great. What's our feedback loop so that I'm not doing it for you, but I know that you're doing it right. And of course, also there's not doing it right, but getting it done that came out poorly. But also understanding that you've got to go ahead and give people the opportunity to do the job. And if they make a mistake, great, let's train through that so we don't make it again, but allow them to do the work, get the feedback loop so that you all are successful. Because if I'm there doing their job for them, they're not successful. I'm not successful. And
that's right.
I'll admit, I was really bad at that.
So you were making the shift then from building projects to building teams of people.
Yeah.
Okay. Now let me ask you this. What did you focus on in order to manage yourself as you were giving people the opportunity to learn and grow, and therefore through that process, maybe not do it as well as you and perhaps fail? And maybe that, see, the thing is, I know just talking to people, it's like, well, if I let them do it and they blow it, that's going to affect the schedule. That's then going to affect the profitability of the job. That's then going to affect the way that I look. How do you manage all of that?
The first thing is making sure that they're hearing what you're saying. That was one thing I did that, I'll admit it, I had to go back and think of some of the stuff from the Army. When you're giving out a mission plan or whatever the case may be, whoever's giving that out, when they get done, they're going to say, all right, repeat back to me what you're going to do. And 9 times out of 10, they didn't hear what you said, or they understood it differently. So first thing I did was bring that back, where when we talk about what we're doing something, it's all right, now, what are you going to do? And so they had to understand I wasn't calling them rude for not listening. I just wanted to understand that they heard it. So first off, got that feedback loop in place. And so then it was okay. Now we know they understand the instruction. I then went ahead and thought back to my working with Dave Knight, where I was a super green project manager. This is the guy that's been doing, well, I guess he was probably my age, the age I am now.
Yeah.
But he let me make mistakes, not big ones, but enough to where they were learning experiences. Going ahead, getting that feedback loop, backing them up when they may make a mistake, taking the responsibility for it, but also being there to go ahead and give the correction and not doing it as a very harsh beratement. Hey, what did we learn from this? Now,
So let me ask you about that, because I was talking to a bunch of foremen and actually superintendents yesterday, and one of the things the supers brought up is, and it's around this whole idea of delegation, is that, man, I got some guys and they're afraid to do stuff because they don't want to fail. And it's not necessarily because they're getting berated or anything like that, but they just don't want to fail. They want to look good. How do you help someone through that fear of failure, particularly when you're giving them some rope, so to speak, to learn and grow?
now that I've got a little gray on my head and so forth, or even at that point, oftentimes when they were going to do something, I would relate something that I did wrong, so that they know that it's a normal part of the process. They're allowed to make mistakes. That's how we learn. And, it's getting them past that fear of, and also going ahead and saying it very upfront. When you talk to somebody about doing something, it's, look, you're going to mess this up. That's okay. You go as far as you can. And when you need help, you raise your hand and let's work together from there. And so allowing them to make that first mistake, not going ahead and tearing them up too bad, so to speak, when it happens, working through it in a positive manner, then they get more confidence to be able to continue to build on that and move forward.
Hey, this is Eric, and I hope you're enjoying the conversation with Ryce today. I know I am. Here's my book, Construction Genius: Effective, Hands-On, Practical, Simple, No BS, Leadership, Strategy, Sales, and Marketing Advice for Construction Companies. Interesting, in our interview here today, Ryce talks about his challenge that he had when he had to shift from being a project manager to a leader of project managers. The book, Construction Genius, is all about how to make that shift. And you need to buy the book for you and the leaders in your team if you want to be better leaders. So what you do is you go out to Amazon, purchase 10 or more copies, and then you shoot me an email. And you say, Eric, I purchased 10 copies of your book. Email is eric@constructiongenius.com. And then I'll shoot you an email and I'll say, great, let's do a question and answer session with your leadership team, where I'll answer any questions that you have about the book and do a bonus training. All of that is worth $3,500 for an hour of my time. But all you have to do is spend $200 purchasing the book, and I'll come in and do it for you at no charge other than that $200. So get the book, and you will definitely benefit from it. Let's get back to the interview with Ryce. How do you distinguish between someone who is, when they're raising their hand and saying, help, I need help? How do you distinguish between someone who genuinely needs help and someone who's either lazy or just doesn't, is trying to delegate back to you?
The number one rule, besides raising your hand and asking for help, is I will give you all the help that you want, but you must come to me. If you have a problem, you got to have one solution.
There you go.
It doesn't have to be a great solution, but it has to be a solution.
There you go. Excellent. Keep it nice and simple, huh? Okay, so then you became a project executive. At what point in your career did you begin to consider the current role that you're in, being the president?
In all honesty, it didn't really occur to me until about a month before I got the job. Well, here was the thing. Ted Benning Jr. worked until he was 90. He worked until a week 92, I think it was. He worked until a week before he died.
Wow.
He loved his work.
Mm-hmm.
And Ted Benning III was looking like he was proceeding in the same path, even though the company had been converted over into an employee-owned company at that. And so, about a month before I became president, Ted went ahead and pulled Ted III, got myself and one other senior guy in here, and he's like, look, both of you are qualified to be president. One of you needs to decide, if you want to do it or not, and let's get back together and discuss it. Well, the other guy and I, we'd known each other for 20 some odd years. We sat down and after a little bit, he goes, Ryce, I'll be honest, I don't want the job. He's like, I'll be your head of operations. I'll be your number 2. That's great. I don't want to sit in the chair. And so went back and said, all right, I'll do it.
Did you want the job?
No, Eric, I'm going to be honest. I love building.
Yeah.
I love getting up in the morning. Every day is an adventure.
Right.
That is what I love about construction. No 2 days are the same.
Yep.
And ever since I took this job 6 years ago, I haven't built a single building. But on the other hand, what I am doing is making sure that we got 100 families that have futures, that we got 100 families that know that their paycheck is coming in,
Yep.
that we are building communities, we're building families, and we're building lives. So I guess I am still building. It's just not with mortar and block.
So it's so interesting. I appreciate you being honest there. How did you make that transition then? How did you embrace that change? How did you handle it yourself?
Very poorly.
Huh.
No, I really did have to go ahead and do a bit of a mental reset because I had no training on how to run a company. I'll admit it. I pulled out some of my old notes and so forth I had from Purdue that I still had on doing like, oh crud, I got to go through this. And so I took a breath and I said, you know what? I just need to do some research and I need to figure out how to do this. People do it all the time. And so I started reading and I got involved with the local Associated General Contractors chapter here in Atlanta. They were incredibly helpful. Also started talking to other contractors and getting their input and their expertise.
Yes.
And so between that, reading, and making mistakes, it's still moving forward.
That's great. So as you look back then at your tenure as president, it's been 6 years now. What is one thing that if you had to do it all over again, you would do differently?
The first year or two, Ted Benning III was still here. And, that's never good because it's still, and I'll admit it, I did not assert myself in that first year or two. I was unsure of myself. I didn't think I knew what I was doing. I knew more than I thought I did. And I had plans on what we needed to do as a company and where we needed to move and how we needed to do it. But I did not do.
Right.
Because that's not the direction Ted wanted to go.
Yep.
And so for the first year or so, I didn't move the company forward like I should have. And then it just hit me one day. It's like, you know what, Ryce, either do the job or don't.
Right. And what conversation did you need to have in order to get to that point?
With myself?
No, with other people.
It wasn't really any outside conversation. It was just we were headed down a road. Our volume had stagnated. We were not expanding as a company in our differentiation of work, in what we were doing. Our margins were shrinking a little bit because we just weren't going anywhere.
Right.
And finally I just said, this is not right. This is not the company that I know. This is not the company that I love. This is what we're going to do. And so I said, we're going to rebrand the company. We're going to update our branding. And that was kind of the first step. And, we'd had our old logo for like 40 or 50 years. And all right, we're going to update our logo. And we're going to spend some money to do this, and we're going to get it done.
Yes.
And I'll be really honest. Once I went ahead and made that decision to spend, it wasn't cheap. To go ahead and get that going, a lot of people turned around and said, "Oh, wait a minute, we're doing something."
Huh.
And that was within the company. And so it was, oh, well, we've rebranded, and then it was all right. We're not, we've done this certain type of work. We're still going to do it, but we're going to do this over here too. And so guys over here, you're going to go ahead and you're going to chase this type of work. And they said, well, what if something else over here comes up? I said, that doesn't matter. You're chasing this and you don't move off of that until I tell you. And, committed people to doing that. And you know what? They were successful. They were successful. They moved forward. And then it was all right. Now we're going to do this. And so once it within the company, it was, oh, well, okay, we are doing things. Oh, we are being successful. Oh, wow. Okay. Let's go ahead and do this. And now, we're at highest backlog this time of year in company history, highest gross profit, highest net profits.
Yep.
In our employees are growing. The great thing is we're getting younger people in. They're learning. They're excited. They're taking on challenges. they're moving forward.
That's terrific. Let's talk about that a little bit, because I know a lot of there's a big challenge in the industry with the shortage of qualified people, particularly in the field. It seems like construction management programs are pretty good at turning out project engineers and folks like that. But, in many construction companies, there's guys and gals that are in their 50s, 60s, about to retire with a tremendous wealth of technical knowledge. And then there's this massive gap to the younger generations, and even finding people can be challenging. What kind of strategies, approaches have you guys taken on in order to address some of those workforce challenges?
We have gone ahead and started interfacing with students at all levels. We are heavily involved in the university level here at Kennesaw State. I teach a few classes over there. Last week, I spent 2 days with the construction class at a local high school.
Mm-hmm.
One of which, one day was spent building. The other day was spent going over the types of jobs in construction, letting them know that it's a good job. It's a great job. They can make a career out of it. And then next week, I'm going to be over at the middle school, at a local middle school, talking to kids over there and letting them know about construction, because a lot of them don't even think about it.
Yes.
They just think buildings just appear, and they don't think how they get there, and they don't understand the great experience that building a building is. So a lot of it, and keep in mind, we may not see students come to our company out of those programs. To me, that doesn't matter.
Yeah.
If out of speaking to 100 students, if 10 of them continue on into construction, to me, that's a win. No matter where they go. As long as they're in the industry, fantastic. My job is a win.
That's interesting, that kind of attitude, because you're right there. You never know who's going to come in, but that commitment to the industry itself, particularly from folks in your particular position in the company, that can have a tremendous positive impact.
Well, and one of the big things I've really found is that, first off, I'll admit it, especially with the high school students, the college kids, not quite so much, but they look at me and they're like, wow, you're old.
Yeah, right.
Yes, I am. But then they say, well, what do you do? And I tell them, and they go, oh, well, you've always done that. And I said, no, I cleaned up trash. I've done this. I've been knee deep in mud. I've taken off roofing. I've done roofing, all those things I did to get to where I am now.
Yes.
And they're like, oh, wow, really? And so, being able to, if you're able to connect with one kid in one class.
Yep.
And get them going. That's like at the high school. There was this one girl who was a senior, and she was asking phenomenal questions.
Wow.
I mean, she was interested, and she was asking. And so I went ahead, and after classes, and I said, hey, you asked some great questions. It's fantastic. What do you want to do? She goes, well, I want to be an electrician. Fantastic. Have you talked to anybody yet? She's like, no. I said, look, I'm going to give you the name of an electrical contractor. She has great training programs, and if you want to call her, she'd be happy to hear from you. So trying, because here's the thing: when you're 17 or 18 years old, most kids don't want to make that call or don't even know how to make that call.
Yeah, it's very true.
If you go ahead and give them the easy, it's like, look, here it is. I just make that one phone call. And so if she does, great.
That's awesome. Let me ask you this. Having had that military background, what kind of work are you guys doing with veterans and stuff like that to get them into the trades or into the business?
We have 2 scholarships over at Kennesaw State.
Okay.
And one of the requirements on that is, so we're encouraging, we do speak to the veteran programs. I think we have several veterans here. We hired a new project manager who is a veteran as well. We are trying to encourage veterans to come into the program because, like I said, the military is great prep for coming into construction.
That's terrific. So let me ask you just a couple more questions, Ryce. Think about the last day that you'll be in the office. Maybe you'll die in the seat at 90, or maybe you'll finish earlier than that. But as you look back at your career on your last day working, What is the one thing that you want to be remembered for?
Wow. That is a heavy question. Look, what I'd like to be remembered for is, and you're going to think this is stupid. I have a saying that I have around the office. Work doesn't have to suck. And so if I could be remembered for anything, it was, hey, you know what? You worked hard, you made working fun, and we got a lot of things done.
That's beautiful. I love that. Thank you. And then the last question, this is hopefully an easier one. You're in Atlanta. What's the one restaurant someone needs to go to? And I know this is actually kind of a tough question with Atlanta cuisine. What's the one restaurant someone needs to go to if they're in Atlanta?
Wow. That is brutal.
Let me ask you a different way. What's the one restaurant you would take someone to?
Chop Steakhouse.
Chop Steakhouse.
The steaks are blank and phenomenal. I mean, everything about it is great.
Excellent. We're going to put a link to Chop Steakhouse in Atlanta in the show notes. Tell us just a little bit more about your company as we're ending up here. Any way people can get in touch with you if they'd like to do that.
Benning Construction Company. We're in Atlanta. We build all over the Southeast. Website is www.benningcc.com. We build retail, grocery, theater, libraries, parking decks, fire stations, police stations. We don't do federal work, but and we like what we do.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Well, I really, really appreciate you joining me today, Ryce. Thank you for being open with the journey that you've been on with your career, and I do wish you all the best.
Thank you very much.
Hey, this is Eric. I hope you enjoyed our conversation today with Ryce. I know I did. Feel free to check out his company at benningcc.com and also the link in the show notes to Chop's Steakhouse in Atlanta. We're going to make sure that gets in there as well. Thank you for listening to Construction Genius. Feel free to share this episode with others. Give us a review of the podcast wherever you get your podcasts, and we'll catch you on the next episode.